It started with a smell. Not the usual smell of rain. Not wet asphalt, not damp soil, not that metallic ozone hint you get before lightning. This was sweet. Sickly sweet. Like overripe fruit left sealed in a plastic bag too long. The first drop hit my windshield at 6:12 p.m. I remember because the sky had been perfectly clear 30 seconds earlier. Then clouds rolled in fast, too fast. Not drifting, not forming, just appearing. A thick gray ceiling sealing off the sunset. By 6:15, it was pouring. The radio cut to static mid-song. No emergency alert. No thunder. Just rain. And that smell. Something terrible came with the rain. The first report I saw was posted at 6:28 p.m. A woman 2 streets over said her dog refused to come inside. It stood in the yard, staring up, letting the rain soak its fur. Wouldn't respond to commands. By 6:34, she posted again. The dog wouldn't move. She tried dragging it. It bit her. Hard. At 6:41, her account went silent. I didn't think much of it at first. Storms do weird things. Animals act strange before weather shifts. Static interference happens. But then my wipers began smearing something across the glass. The rain wasn't clear. It had weight. It streaked slightly darker than water. When the headlights of the car in front of me hit it at an angle, I saw it. Tiny black specks suspended in each droplet, like ash or spores. I pulled into my driveway and ran inside. By the time I shut the door, my shirt was damp at the shoulders. The smell intensified indoors, like it had followed me. At 7:02 p.m., the power flickered once, then held. I went to the window. Big mistake. The streetlights were on, but the rain distorted them into long vertical streaks, like the sky was pulling downward in threads. Across the street, Mrs. Delaney stood in her yard, no umbrella, arms at her sides, head tilted back, mouth open, letting the rain fall directly onto her face. She wasn't blinking. I tapped the glass. She didn't react. The rain soaked her hair flat against her skull. Her jaw opened wider, too wide, and something moved inside her mouth. Not her tongue, something else. I stepped back from the window, locked it, closed the curtains. At 7:19 p.m., emergency alerts finally came through. Severe weather advisory. Remain indoors. Avoid direct contact with precipitation. That wording stuck with me. Direct contact. Like the rain wasn't just water, like it was carrying something. My phone buzzed again. A second alert. If exposed, wash immediately. Do not allow rain to enter eyes or mouth. Too late for Mrs. Delaney. At 7:31 p.m., the screaming started. Not one house, all of them. A ripple of noise up and down the street. Doors slamming open, people shouting names. Then coughing. Deep, wet, choking coughs. I heard something hit my front door. Soft. Then another. Then several. Like handfuls of mud thrown against it. I didn't open it. I didn't even check the peephole. The smell was stronger now, seeping under the doorframe. Sweet. Rotting. Alive. At 7:42 p.m., the rain changed sound. It stopped pattering. It began tapping. Individual impacts, measured, like fingers drumming on the roof. I made the mistake of looking again. Just a quick peek through the curtain. The street was empty now. No neighbors, no cars moving. The rain was thicker, heavier, and the black specks inside it were more visible under the streetlight. They weren't specks. They were moving. Tiny thread-like shapes writhing inside each droplet before impact. When the drops hit pavement, they burst, and the threads crawled. Something knocked on my back door. 3 slow knocks, then a pause, then 3 more. I froze. It knocked again, but softer, almost polite. "Let me in. It's cold." The rain doesn't make you cold in July. I didn't answer. The knocking stopped. Then the handle rattled. Then the door fronting creaked as something leaned its weight against it. Not slamming, just pressing, testing. After a full minute, the pressure eased. Footsteps retreated into rain. But the tapping on the roof continued. Faster now, more numerous. At 8:03 p.m., my sink started gurgling. Water backed up in the drain. Dark, not sewer dark, rain dark, and moving. Thin black threads writhing in the water like hair clumps coming alive. I grabbed bleach from under the counter and poured it straight into the drain. The water hissed. The threads spasmed violently, then dissolved into gray foam. The smell worsened immediately, like something angry. Outside, the tapping turned to scraping across the walls, along the siding, against the windows. Thousands of tiny impacts, trying to find entry. My phone rang at 8:11 p.m. No caller ID, just a blank screen. I shouldn't have answered, but I did. All I heard was rain, heavy, close, and breathing, slow, wet. Then a whisper, "It's already inside." The line went dead. I turned slowly toward the hallway. The air felt thicker, humid. I could hear it now. Soft movement inside the walls, behind the drywall, like something small crawling through insulation, multiplying. The tapping on the roof intensified. Then something hit the chimney, hard. The house shook. I ran upstairs. Bad idea. Never corner yourself. But instinct took over. Halfway up, I slipped. The steps were damp. Not from a leak, from footprints, leading down, small, bare, dozens of them. In my bedroom, the window was fogged from the inside. Something had been breathing on it. I backed away slowly. The fog shifted. Finger trails appeared in the condensation, lines drawn from inside the room, not outside. I wasn't alone. The closet door creaked, just a little. Then a drop of rain fell from the ceiling, on my shoulder. Cold, heavy. It slid down my skin, and I felt it. Movement, under the surface. I screamed and slapped at it. The droplets smeared black across my palm. Thin threads wriggled frantically, trying to find purchase. I ran to the bathroom, turned on the shower full blast, hot water, scalding. I stood under it, fully clothed. The droplet dissolved, but the water pooling at my feet wasn't clear. Dark streaks swirled toward the drain, and from the drain something pushed back, a single thread thicker than the others, testing the air, searching. I stomped it. It recoiled. I grabbed a lighter from the sink and ignited a small burst of flame toward the drain opening. The thread shriveled instantly. The smell became unbearable. Rot, decay, and something chemical. Outside, the rain intensified again, not random, focused, hammering specifically above the bathroom. The ceiling bowed slightly, then cracked, a thin line spreading like a fracture in bone. Black water seeped through, dripped faster, then poured. I ran. Downstairs, slipped again on damp prints. The front window shattered inward, not from impact, from pressure. Rain forced itself through the opening in a sheet, and with it, they came. Threads spilling over the sill, coiling, gathering, not separate anymore, forming thicker ropes, braiding together, shaping. A torso, arms, limbs assembled from writhing filaments, featureless face with a mouth too wide. It stepped onto my carpet, leaving no footprints, only dampness. More shapes formed behind it, neighbors reassembled from rain, bodies made of woven black strands. They didn't attack.
They didn't rush. They just stood there, dripping, watching. The first one tilted its head. "You opened," it said, voice layered, wet. I shook my head. "No," I whispered. It took one step closer, each movement accompanied by a sound like soaked rope tightening. "You breathe," it continued. "Yes," I said automatically. Another step. "You drink." I understood then. It wasn't about being outside. It wasn't about touching the rain. It was about water. All water. Reservoirs, pipes, clouds. The rain wasn't invasion. It was delivery. And the sink had backed up before the rain even intensified. They weren't entering from above.
It rained again 2 weeks later. No forecast, no humidity buildup, no cloud fronts on radar. At 5:03 p.m., the sky over the city dimmed just slightly, like someone turned the brightness down by 10%. People barely noticed. At 5:04 p.m., the first drop fell. Clear this time. Perfectly clear. No black specks, no visible threads. Just water. And that was worse, because by then, we knew it didn't need to be visible. Emergency alerts triggered immediately. Avoid contact with precipitation. Do not ingest municipal water. Seek dry shelter. But you can't undrink water. You can't unbreathe steam. You can't unbe 70% liquid. The rain intensified fast. Within minutes, streets flooded ankle deep. Storm drains overflowed not because they were clogged, but because water was rising up from them, meeting the rain in the middle, like two tides colliding. I was ready this time. Windows sealed with plastic and tape. Bathtub filled days ago with bottled water. Gas stove ready with matches. Heat is separation. Heat is survival. At least, that's what we thought. At 5:11 p.m., the knocking began. Not on doors, on pipes, inside the walls, rhythmic tapping through plumbing lines. Every house on the block echoed with it, metal expanding, contracting, like something moving through narrow spaces, testing diameter. My sink vibrated, the toilet water trembled, then stilled, then began spinning slowly, clockwise. No flush, just rotation. The power went out at 5:14. Not grid failure, deliberate. Transformers didn't explode, they just shut down. Because electricity heats, electricity dries, electricity resists. The rain hit harder, against roof, against siding, against sealed windows. And then, it stopped sounding like rain. It sounded like breathing. Deep inhalations across the entire neighborhood, followed by exhalations that rattled gutters. At 5:19, my phone buzzed one last time before battery saver mode triggered. New guideline: do not burn contaminated structures. I stared at the message. Do not burn. But fire had worked before. I understood why seconds later. The rain thickened, not in droplet size, in texture. It became viscous, syrupy. It pooled on rooftops without running off, clung to surfaces, and when lightning flashed in the distance, I saw movement inside the downpour. Not threads, not strands, but full shapes, suspended, hundreds of them, curled, dormant, waiting to hit ground. It wasn't colonizing through infiltration anymore. It was arriving fully formed. The first roof on the block collapsed at 5:23 p.m., not from weight, from internal dissolution. Wood beams softened like wet cardboard. The rain wasn't soaking structures, it was digesting them.
My ceiling began to sag, water pooled above drywall, and something pressed downward from within it. A palm-shaped bulge, 5 long, thin impressions pushing through the material, testing, then retracting. The pipes in the walls burst, but no water sprayed. Instead, a dense black mist poured from the breaks. It smelled sweeter than before, overpowering. My throat tightened instantly. Coughing didn't help, because it wasn't just in the air, it was in me. You don't realize how much water you carry until something inside you responds to it. At 5:26, I felt the first internal movement. Not pain, not stabbing, just pressure, like bubbles rising under skin. My vision flickered. For a second, the room looked doubled, overlaid, like during the Sky event, except this overlay wasn't architecture, it was fluid. Veins in my arms darkened visibly, not bruising, patterning, spirals forming beneath the skin. I grabbed the stove lighter again, flipped it on, flame steady. I held it close to my forearm. The spirals recoiled, the pressure lessened. Heat disrupted them, but heat also consumed oxygen. The mist thickened, breathing became labor. Outside, I heard something new. Not footsteps, not knocking. Singing. Low, vibrational, a harmonic tone that resonated through bone more than air. The rain was organizing, not chaotic descent, choral structure, each drop part of a unified frequency. At 5:30 p.m., the sky changed color. Not dark, not gray. It became pale blue-white, like bleached bone. And through it, I saw the shape again. Not the superstructure from before, something different. Vast, diffuse, cloud-like but intentional. An organism stretched across atmospheric layers. We thought it came with the rain. We were wrong. The rain was it. Not vehicle, not carrier. Body. We were inside its lungs. The cycle made sense then. Evaporation wasn't passive physics, it was respiration. The oceans weren't just water reserves, they were source tissue. Clouds weren't weather systems, they were growth nodes. And rainfall? Reproduction. It didn't need to invade violently, it just needed to integrate into the cycle. Once enough of it was everywhere, once saturation reached critical mass, the separation between rain and life would end. At 5:33 p.m., every person on my street stepped outside simultaneously. Doors opened in sync, no hesitation, no umbrellas. They walked calmly into the thick downpour, faces upturned, mouths open, welcoming. The mist inside my house responded. It drifted toward the open doorway, drawn to larger mass, to congregation. I stumbled outside against my better judgment. The air felt heavier, denser. Breathing felt like swallowing. Neighbors stood ankle-deep in pooling water. The surface wasn't still. It pulsed, like muscle beneath skin. Mrs. Delaney stood among them, unchanged physically, but her eyes, reflective, surface tension instead of pupils. She looked at me and smiled softly. "You are almost ready," she said. Not layered voice this time, just calm, human. I backed away. My foot slipped in pooled water. My palm hit the ground. The water absorbed around it instantly. Threads of cold pressure entered through skin, up my wrist, inside. I screamed and staggered upright. The singing intensified. The sky organism pulsed brighter. And then, The rain stopped. Mid-fall, every droplet froze in place, suspended, thousands of beads hanging motionless in air. Time did not stop, only water. The suspended droplets trembled slightly, then reversed, rising, returning upward. Neighbors did not move as water lifted off their skin and clothing, drawing back toward the sky. The pressure inside my veins eased, spirals faded, the sky organism thinned, retreated, evaporation accelerated unnaturally. Within seconds, streets were dry, roofs intact, collapsed house restored, pipes silent, mist gone. Everything reset. Except for one detail. The puddle where I had slipped remained. Perfect circle, about 6 feet wide, water inside it darker than surroundings, still. Mrs. Delaney stepped toward it. "So close," she whispered. Then she stepped in. The water accepted her instantly. No splash, no ripple. She sank without resistance. Gone. The puddle remained, calm, inviting. Others followed, one by one, stepping in, submerging in inches deep water like it was miles deep. Vanishing. The puddle did not overflow. It did not expand.